We will now call the business session of the April 20th, 2021 council meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. On March 16th, 2020, the governor suspended various provisions of the Open Meetings Act pursuant to his state of disaster authority. The change was effective March 16th, 2020 until further notice or until the state of disaster declaration expires. In accordance with physical distancing guidelines and while providing for as much transparency as possible, this meeting will not be open to the public. This meeting is being broadcast live at wccc.tv. The audio is also being recorded. The video and audio recordings will be available to the public. According to the governor and attorney general, statutes that may require face-to-face interaction between members of the public and public officials are suspended, provided, however, that the governmental body offers alternative methods of communications with their public officials. This includes public comment on agenda items. In an effort to allow for as much public input as possible, those who wish to speak or submit their written comments on a listed agenda item were asked to register with the city secretary's office by noon today. Individuals who registered to speak on an agenda item must limit their comments to 3 minutes. On items other than public hearing, speakers will be allotted 1 3-minute presentation regardless of the number of agenda items the speaker wishes to address. When called to speak, please state your name for the record. Any person making impersonal, impertinent, slanderous remarks or becomes boisterous while addressing the city council shall be removed if directed by the presiding officer. Now for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda is to consider the minutes of the April 6th, 2021 regular city council meeting. Are there any corrections? There being no corrections, those minutes will stand as presented, and we will now, there are no special proclamations today, so we'll move to public hearings. Public hearing 2021-224, and Kent George, I believe, will be making this presentation to council.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. This is a public hearing on an ordinance amending the project and financing plan for reinvestment zone number 1 for tax increment financing, TIF zone 1, to consider approving an agreement to provide TIF funds in an amount not to exceed $65,803 to 8th Street Development, LLC, to assist with public improvements, enhanced infrastructure, and environmental remediation associated with the repair and renovation of a 2,578 square foot building at 407 South 8th Street, and authorizing the city manager to execute any documents necessary to complete these transactions, providing an effective date, providing a saving clause, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance comes to you on first reading. On August 13th, 2020, the Reinvestment TIF Zone 1 for Tax Increment Financing Board of Directors, also known as the TIF Board, voted 7-0 to recommend funding up to $65,803 to 8th Street Development, LLC, to assist with public improvements, enhanced infrastructure, and environmental remediation associated with the repair and renovation of a 2,578 square foot building at 407 South 8th Street. As required by law, a notice of the public hearing was published in the Waco Tribune Herald on April 9th, 2021.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Kent. Are there any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing for comments. Did anyone register to speak on this item?
Mayor and Council, no one registered for this item.
We will close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
Motion for approval on first reading. Sorry.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes, sorry.
That motion carries. We will now move on to public hearing 2021-226. And Clint Peters, our Development Services Director, will be making this presentation.
Yes, sir, Mayor. Before we start this one, public hearings 225 through 227 are all special permits with the same findings for approval. So I'd like to read those in the record first and then go through the cases individually. The findings are that the proposed use is consistent with the comprehensive plan, that the proposed use is compatible with the appropriate and orderly development of the area which is located, that the proposed use would not be more objectionable to neighboring properties because of traffic congestion, noise, fumes, vibrations, or any other characteristics than any use permitted in the zoning district without the grant of the special exception, and that available community facilities and services, including the road system providing access to the proposed use, are adequate for the proposed use. So for public hearing 225, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to JS Bird Properties LLC, Series 4613 Cole Avenue, for a short-term rental type 2 in R1B zoning district on property described as Lot 7, Block 5 of the Champion Edition, known as 4613 Cole Avenue. By a vote of 8-0, Plan Commission recommended approval based on the findings that I just read in the record, which are required for granting of a special permit per section 28.122 of the zoning ordinance.
Are there any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing. Did anyone register to speak on this item?
Mayor and council, no one had registered to speak for this item.
Very good. We will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Yes, Mayor. I would just add that, with the housing inventory shortage right now, if it was up to me, I would vote, to keep type 2, which is the non-owner occupied STRs out of R1B, which is single family zoning. However, I am hopeful that city staff is coming up with some recommendations that'll help improve this ordinance going forward and our process. And so in these cases, when there's no opposition that's articulated or that council members have a notion of, I do likely plan to vote for these, just as a note.
I second what council member Borderud said. I think having just recently purchased a home in Waco and seeing just the lack of availability in housing stock in the city's core, I really am hesitant to see houses go to STRs and take care of people from out of town as opposed to our own residents. And so for that reason, I will be voting no on this item and similar items going forward in the future. I really want to make sure that we are protecting our housing stock and making sure that we are offering just the very basic of Maslow's hierarchy of needs to our residents in the community.
I hear where you're coming from on that, Councilmember Palmer, and I think I certainly respect that perspective. I think that what I hear loud and clear from this council is a future agenda item for short-term rental reform and evaluation of this, and really an in-depth look on our housing. I'm going to fall on the other side of the line from that just a little bit because I look at there is this need for housing, but there's also a need for renovations within our housing stock. And I think that there's some creative ways that we can implement holistic community-based renovations that protect the interest of our own community members, but also looking at that, I think this is one way to do that. And I think that with our buffer rules, the 500-foot rule, we can limit the number of short-term rentals. So I think that based on that and some of what Councilmember Borderud articulated as well, is why I feel comfortable with voting in favor of this one. Any other discussion? Please poll council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
No.
Borderud,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
No.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move on to public hearing 2021-226.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to Christopher and Rebecca Kosha for a short-term rental type 2 in R1B zoning on property described as lots 22 through 25, block 1 of Holly Vista Edition, known as 1309 Holly Vista Street. By a vote of 7-1, Plan Commission recommended approval of the request based on the findings required for granting a special permit for section 28.122 of the zoning ordinance.
Any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing. Did anyone register to speak on this item?
No, sir.
Councilmember Shabito, were you going to say something? Okay, great. We will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
No.
Porterrood,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
No.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries. Public hearing 2021-228.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to Carmen and Rodney Roller for short-term rental type 1 in R1B zoning district on property described as Lot 16, Block 5 of the Highland Edition, known as 2901 Homan Avenue. By a vote of 7-1, Plan Commission recommended approval of the request based on the findings required for granting of a special permit per section 28.122 of the zoning ordinance.
Any questions for staff? We will open a public
Hey,
hearing.
Clint, just to clarify, this is a type 1 where the actual owner is living on the premises, correct?
Yes, sir. It's a duplex, and so they live on one side of the duplex, and they're wanting to rent out the other side of the duplex.
Thank you so much, sir. I just wanted to make the distinction, but thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
It's not a question. I'll echo the conversation that my other council members. I am really looking forward to us going into a deep dive on this because, you know, we've just been inundated with these challenges. And I think if we set a tone, set a precedent, make it clear to our applicants moving forward that this is not a sure thing. And we are really looking at what we do and don't have, and making sure that we're not prioritizing our short-term residents over our long-term residents, because the need is great there for, you know, in the difficulties witnessed as our one of our newer council members is trying to settle in Waco fully and finding a home. You know, the people who we will have coming into these, you know, 1,000,000 square feet facilities, they're not all going to already live here, and they're going to have to, pastors coming in, you know, we're going to have somewhere for them to live. And so I think that when we look at these things moving forward with that in mind, what we looked at in the past wasn't wrong. It's just not suited for us where we are today. So I appreciate staff's ability to move forward and be nimble and work with us in this as we grow.
And to echo that, I think data could help show us that. If we like really saw the amount of housing, we might say, actually there's room for short-term rentals in this like community, or, oh, actually like, no, this is more dire than we thought, instead of just kind of going on this feeling of urgency that I know people who are having a hard time finding a house, but how does that translate to this short-term rental on this block? And so I do think there's a more in-depth analysis that we can take to really ensure that, to Councilmember Barefield's point, that we're thinking through our long-term residents.
This feels exciting too, because Mayor Meek, you've mentioned this in previous meetings. Some of what makes you think of STRs hospitably is restoring these old houses. And we know that we have so many of these old homes that are falling into disrepair. And this just feels like a really ripe invitation for us to prioritize that in our budget for the next few years, to make sure that we are taking care of creating regenerative housing stock and taking advantage of the land to do infill development. So the workers coming in from Amazon and Hello Bello and some of the people that are relocating have beautiful, safe places to purchase a home, and Wacoans who are building generational wealth also have access to that, and it operating in the both and. But it feels like we're like at this precipice point and hopefully moving in a cohesive, coordinated move going forward.
Mayor, not to discourage council.
We're still on I know that we're still on the questions for staff. Any other questions or comments for staff? All right, we'll move on and open a public hearing. Is there did anyone register to speak on this item?
No, sir.
We'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All I'll say is that I think that, as was already highlighted, that the owners live on site. So this is a great way for people in communities to utilize creative strategies to build wealth for their families. And I'm excited to vote for yes for this one.
I appreciate too that Clint Peters had offered that this particular couple has owned or owns an additional STR and has a strong track record of maintaining it well, and that also adds to my willingness and excitement to vote yes for this, because we know that these are good community partners that neighbors are happy to be a part of their neighborhood.
Excellent point. Thank you. Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Porterwood,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries, and we will move on to public hearing 2021-228.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance providing for the extension of certain boundary limits of the city of Waco, Texas, and the annexation and designation of office industrial flex as the comprehensive plan land use designation and the designation of C2 community commercial district. Zoning of certain territory described as a 3.006 acre tract of land situated in the Carlos Ocampo survey, abstract number 32, city of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, being all of a called 2.5 tract of land, which tract 1, and all of a called 0.5 acre tract of land, tract 2, both described in a warranty deed with a vendor's lien to KF LLC, recorded in document 2010 0034877, officially public records of McLennan County, Texas, and being located at the intersection of Texas Central Parkway and Bagby Avenue, and further located within Waco's extraterritorial jurisdiction, which said territory lies adjacent to and adjoins the present boundaries of the city limits of city of Waco, Texas, assigning that the annexed territory to City Council District 3, establishing City of Waco Precinct 60, which will consist of the annexed territory, directing that the city precincts districts map be revised to reflect that change, and providing voting locations at any of the City of Waco vote centers, providing that said that the territory bears pro rata parts of taxing and entitling inhabitants to all rights and privileges of citizens, and binding inhabitants to acts and laws of the city, adopting a service plan, providing severability clause, providing for publishing of ordinance, providing penalties therefore, and finding determined the meeting in which this ordinance passes them to the public as required by law. By a vote of 8-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the annexation, the designation of land use, office and industrial flex land use, and designation of C2 zoning.
Any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing for comments. Did anyone register to speak?
no, sir.
We'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval on first reading.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Porterwood,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to 2021-229.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing that the Code of Ordinance of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code, providing that zoning map shall be changed so that certain property described as lots 5, 6, and 7, Block 2, the Van Hall Edition, and known as 2215 and 2217 Washington Avenue, shall be changed from C2 district classification and be designated in the O3 district classification, providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding to determine that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. By a vote of 8-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the zone change based on the following findings. 1, the proposed zoning is keeping with the land use component of the comprehensive plan and the Imagine Waco plan for greater downtown. 2, the public infrastructure is adequate to provide for uses allowed in O3 zoning. 3, the property meets all the area and width requirements for O3 zoning. 4, there is a O3 zoning adjacent to the subject. And 5, O3 zoning brings the existing residential uses into conformance with the zoning ordinance.
Any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing for comments. Did anyone register to speak?
No, sir.
We will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Motion for approval on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Porter,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll go to 2021-230.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance of the city of Waco, Texas, providing that the code of ordinance of the city of Waco be amended by revising section 28-247 and chapter 28 zoning of said code, providing that the zoning map shall be changed so that certain property described as lots 3 through 8, block 2, the Lincoln Park edition, known as 710 East Park Street, shall be changed from R2 district classification and become and be designated in the O3 district classification. Providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding determined the meaning in which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. By a vote of 8-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the request based on the following findings. 1, the proposed zoning is in keeping with the land use component of the comprehensive plan and the Imagine Waco plan for greater downtown. 2, the public infrastructure is adequate to provide for uses allowed in O3 zoning. 3, the property meets all the area and width requirements for O3 zoning. 4, the proposed O3 zoning is compatible with the surrounding area. And 5, the property is located along a major arterial street, which is Waco Drive.
Any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing. Did anyone register to speak on this item?
no, sir.
We will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Move for denial on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion?
As mentioned in our work session, I think that making the decision to shift this area when, in our many discussions regarding STRs and other things, we are in desperate need of residential communities. This is, I understand where it is and where it's juxtaposed in the future plan to keep it as a, office industrial flex use space. But I think, it would behoove us to stop for a minute and think about what we have. I know it's a lot of, it is not, necessarily make ready right now, but I think it would be a mistake for us to start switching up and breaking up this completely succinct patch of residential land just when we're in desperate need of it. So I cannot support the zoning change at this time.
And this is Holmes. I concur with the council member Bearfield on this. It should be a very high bar whenever we start changing residential zoning to a different type. And the position we're in, just maybe it's anecdotally, but I do agree with you, Mayor. We need to see this very data oriented. But anecdotally, seeing housing costs rise from whatever the average was, 150 to 220, 30, whatever it is, we should be conscious of our residential zoning and try to preserve it where it makes sense. So I will be voting in favor of the denial.
Any other discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Porter,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2021-231.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance abandoning a portion of right-of-way located at Dutton Avenue between South 4th Street and University Parks Drive, described as a 3.574 acre tract located in the Thomas J. Chambers Grant, abstract number 9, McLennan County, Texas, and being all of the existing Dutton Avenue right-of-way, which is variable width, located between South 4th Street and University Parks Drive, providing severability clause and finding determining that the meeting in which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. By a vote of 8-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the abandonment based on the following findings and conditions. The findings are public use of the right-of-way is not required for proper flow or traffic or for emergency vehicle access to the area. Utility access for surrounding properties is not adversely impacted by the abandonment of the right-of-way. And the abandonment of the public right-of-way allows Baylor University to provide better connectivity to future expansion projects on the north side of Denton to the existing campus. We do have two conditions, one being all existing water, wastewater, and gas line easements be retained by the appropriate utility purveyors for the area of the abandoned right-of-way, and that access shall be retained between University Parks Drive and South 4th Street.
Any questions for staff?
And Mayor, real quickly, I believe, I may have misheard it, but I believe it's abstract 7, not abstract 9, I believe.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing for comments. Did anyone register to speak on this item?
No, sir.
We will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Motion for approval on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries, and we will move on to the consent agenda. But before we consider the consent agenda, we have two resolutions to consider separately. The first of which is Resolution 2021-232, approving the appointment of Davis Mislowski to the Sustainability Resources Practice Advisory Board. Dr. Al Northcutt is registered to speak on this. Is he on the line?
yes, I'm moving him over. Mr. Northcutt, are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
And you can hear my audio?
Yes, sir.
Okay. First of all, I applaud the nomination of Davis Mislowski to the board. His degree in environmental studies and earth science and his lead green associate status will be assets to the board, I believe. But I want to again point out that the critical sustainability issue of this century is the climate crisis. Now, the board composition requires, quote, one representative from a civic/environmental organization, close quote. The organization in Waco dedicated to education and action on the climate crisis is Waco Friends of the Climate. Members have applied to this board for years. The board criteria also calls for expertise in recycling. I would note that the organization began the first Waco styrofoam recycling program about 2 years ago, staffed totally by our volunteers. So I think this organization should be represented on the board. Also, a little update, where are we now in the climate crisis? Now, a new report from the World Meteorologic Organization noted that global mean temperature has now risen to 1.2 C above pre-industrial. And that's very close to the critical 1.5 limit that's advocated by scientists to prevent the worst impacts of climate change. All greenhouse gases continue to rise, and the number of Atlantic hurricanes set a record in 2020, as you probably know. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres stated just recently, we are in the, quote, we are on the verge of the abyss, close quote. Now, we've pressed the Council for Climate Action for years, and small steps have been taken. But one important thing has been forgotten, and I want to mention that tonight. We need to have a baseline to measure progress. Thus, I strongly recommend before the 2022 switch to renewable energy for municipal buildings that we obtain a greenhouse gas inventory for the city. And organizations such as the Carbon Disclosure Project or the CDP, through that you can obtain a baseline for your city, and you have a handout that talks about the CDP. Finally, on a positive note, we should remember that April 22nd, it's just 2 days from now, is the 51st celebration of Earth Day. And in its honor, the Waco Friends of Climate will hold its 8th annual free reusable shopping bag giveaway at the Waco's Farmers Market this Saturday from 9 to 1. And why is this important? Well, this will help decrease the use of single-use plastic, and that will decrease plastic pollution, keep a lot of plastic out of the landfill, and also help fight greenhouse gas emissions. So thank you.
Is there a motion on resolution 2021-232?
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the
I
council.
just,
sorry.
just real quick, I appreciate what Dr. Northcutt said, along both the lines to move us forward. And Davis, I think Davis is an excellent fit for this role, and excited to have his education and vision and experience serve us and move us forward.
Thank you, council member. Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Borderoot,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to resolution 2021-244, which is a motion to approve this item must be made using very specific language. Council has been provided with this specific language. Is there a motion on this item?
I make a motion that the city of Waco, by one record vote applying to all units of property to be condemned, authorize the acquisition, including the use of the power of eminent domain, if such becomes necessary, to A, acquire perpetual water and or sewer pipeline easements in, on, over, under, along, through, and across an aggregate of 1.998 total acres of land, and B, acquire temporary construction and access easements in, on, over, under, along, through, and across an aggregate of 1.621 total acres of land, all of said acreage being located on tracts of land located along State Highway 6, Loop 340 between Bagby Avenue and US Highway 84. Said acquisition being for the purpose of placing, constructing, reconstructing, operating, repairing, inspecting, maintaining, rebuilding, replacing, relocating, and removing wastewater and or water system pipelines and related appurtenances and facilities needed for the relocation and installation of the municipal wastewater and water systems, including the improvements in connection with the State Highway 6, Loop 340 utility relocation project. And I'm so glad I was not on mute during that.
I'll second that. Hector, I'm not going to ask you to read it again.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Borderoot,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to the consent agenda, which consists of resolutions 2021-232 through 2021-245, with the exception of resolutions 2021-232 and 2021-244. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Move for approval of consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Borderoot,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll now move on to the ordinances.
Mayor, the first ordinance is 2021-246. An ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code. Provide the zoning map shall be changed so that certain property described as lots 9 and 10, Block 4, Tiger Edition, known as 1301 Daughtry Avenue, shall be changed from R2 district classification and become and be designated to R3C district classification. Providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed, open to public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on April 6, 2021.
Is there a motion?
Motion for approval on second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Borderoot,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll now move on to ordinance 2021-247.
In order for the City of Waco, Texas, providing the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code. Providing the zoning map shall be changed so that certain property described as Lot 5, Block 3, Central Professional Park Addition, known as 6251 Bagby Avenue, shall be changed from M2 district classification and become and be designated as C2 district classification. Providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and terminating the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on April 6, 2021.
Is there a motion?
Move for approval on second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Porterud,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to ordinance 2021-248.
In order for the City of Waco, Texas, providing the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code. Providing the zoning map shall be changed so that certain property described as Lot 11, Block 1, Wortham Bend Retail Center Addition, known as 10108 China Spring Road, property ID 361042, and a 0.851 acre tract of land located in the James Lane Survey, Abstract 531, City of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, and being a portion of Lot 12, Block 1, Wortham Bend Retail Center Addition, Lot 11 through 12, Block 1, is recorded in document number 2011-032363 of the official public records of McLennan County, Texas, known as 10,200 China Spring Road, property ID 361043, shall be changed from O3 district classification, become and be designated as C2 district classification. Providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and terminating the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on April 6, 2021.
Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Porterud,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to ordinance 2021-249.
An ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code. Provide the zoning map shall be changed so that certain property described as lots 10, A11, and B12, Block 51, Ross subdivision, known as 1014 and 1016 Ross Avenue, property IDs 188677 and 188679, lots C12, A12, A21, and A22, Block 51, Ross subdivision, and Lot B22, Block 2, H.J. Chamberlain Addition, known as 800 South 11th Street, property ID 188680, lots 2 and E, Block 51, Ross subdivision, known as 804 South 11th Street, property ID 188678, Lot 2, Block 51, Ross subdivision, and lots B9 and 19, Block 2, H.J. Chamberlain Addition, known as 812 South 11th Street, property ID 188676, lots 8 and 18, Block 2, H.J. Chamberlain Addition, known as 816 South 11th Street, property ID 188675, Lot 23, Block 2, H.J. Chamberlain Addition, known as 826 South 11th Street, property ID 167540, Lot 6, 7B, and C7, Block 51, Ross subdivision, known as 1013, 1017, and 1019 Cleveland Avenue, property ID 188672, 188673, and 188674, shall be changed from C3 district classification and become and be designated O2 district classification. Providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and terminating the meeting at which this ordinance is passed, so open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on April 6, 2021.
Is there a motion?
Motion for approval on second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
And Mayor, Mike Ash registered to speak if you had questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Ash?
Nope.
Very good. Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Porterud,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to ordinance 2021-250.
An ordinance abandoning a portion of right-of-way located at the northeast corner of Bob's Drive and Woodcrest Drive, described as 0.115 acres of land in the city of Waco in the J. Sampier edition survey, abstract number 785, McLennan County, Texas, and being a portion of Woodcrest Drive bound by the southeast line of Cobb's Drive, the southwest line of Lot 1, Block 1 of the residency at Ridgewood Addition, to the city of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, recorded under McLennan County Clerk's file number 2020-033864 of the official public records of McLennan County, Texas. In the northeast line of that called 0.013 acre tract is shown in the Southern Terrace Addition to the city of Waco, McLennan County, Texas. As recorded in volume 1244, page 466 of the deed records of McLennan County, Texas, and authorizing the city manager to execute quitclaim deeds, providing a severability clause, and finally determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed to open the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on April 6, 2021.
Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval on second reading.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Porterud,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to the hearing of visitors. Are there any registered speakers for the hearing of visitors today?
Mayor and council, we don't have any registered speakers. We did have a comment that was submitted from Mr. Ephraim Herring that was forwarded, I believe, to the council earlier and to city staff. He did actually want to try to speak, but we were unable to confirm his time, but we did say we would forward that information to you. But that's all we had.
Thank you, Esmeralda. We will not open a hearing of visitors then. And we will move to council reports and requests for future agenda items. Are there any council member reports on committees, boards, or commission liaison visits? If not, are there any requests for future agenda items? Very good. There being no further business, we will adjourn today's meeting at 6:43 p.m. This was a great meeting. We appreciate everybody. Everyone have a good evening. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.